What's going on YouTube? Cardfight King here. So today, guys, I wanted to bring you my deck profile for my Cross Hunters deck. Sorry, I'm trying to get over this allergies, cold, whatever. But I really like this deck. It is basically, it definitely feels like a purple deck, but I call it a purple deck with black multicolored air forces on. Really, what this deck is definitely a setup deck. It's definitely considered to be one of the best decks in the game. I think it's a little bit overhyped in terms of like where its place is in the meta. I do think its ceiling is definitely in the tier 1 arena. It can be very strong, really good, but it can also you can also heavily miss with this deck. This deck definitely wants you to think a few steps ahead of your opponent. Think about what you want to put under your tamers and whatnot, and then in matchups where your tamers are getting destroyed and things like that, how do you parse out your tamers? How do you like put them under different things, and then kind of like force your opponent to pick and choose? So it's definitely a very fun deck, really cool, but there are a lot of micro decisions that you have to make with this deck that can make or break your end game. But let's get into the deck profile. It's a really fun deck, really cool, and pretty strong too. And you just build it right out of the set. For Monimon, when a Digimon with save gets deleted, you draw a card. So it's kind of like your Demi-Marimon of the deck in a way, but it works for any Digimon that has save in its text. And when the card has save, it just means save just needs to be printed on the card somewhere, and then it has save. So that is a good thing. So then for the rookies, we play 3 Ikaimon. We just call him Pencil around here. 4 copies of the Dracmon, 4 copies of Psychmon, and 4 copies of Gum. The extra Ikaimon, I could probably cut down the Ikaimon to probably to 2, or I can cut the Dracmon down to 3. That's a ratio I kind of play around with quite a bit. But pretty much the all of the at least your core save units have the same ability where when it gets deleted you can save, but they all have different on plays. And you'll notice a theme of the deck. So yellow cards -2, green cards give you plus 2000 DP, and purple cards let you draw as their inheritables when attacking. So there is that. Now the thing is that Dracmon is there because there are times where you do have a bunch of tamers on field, and in a matchup where you're not playing against tamer destruction, those tamers in your hand can clog, especially when you're looking for like your Arresterdramons and things like that. Playing him out means that you get to reveal up to 3 tamers from your hand, put them at the bottom of your deck, and draw 3 new cards. Kind of like a Pot of Avarice, kind of like a little bit of a recycle thing. So that's good for like cleaning up your hand when it's like just kind of like stuck with tamers and not enough Digimon. What Gum does is that when he comes out, you can put a Digimon under a tamer and draw a card. So it helps you get some cycle off. Also lets you put a card under a tamer for future play. And then Psychmon is kind of like your fish hook. When he comes out on play, you get to grab a card with save from under one of your tamers, add to your hand. So a lot of the times, if you put your Arresterdramon under a tamer, you drop Psychmon, grab the Arresterdramon, Digivolve Arresterdramon on top of him. Now the stack has Rush, and so Psychmon's really your in-game kind of play. Gumdramon's like your early game kind of play, and then Dracmon, really you utilize him when you need to clean up your hand. If not, then he's just a card you look to just put under a tamer and utilize his 2000 DP, or use him for his Digicross, and then if you have like an Arresterdramon in hand, go on top of him to get Rush. And then Ikaimon's like your main target you want to just Digivolve in the raising area or use as a cross or something like that. So then that is the rookies. Going on to the level 4s. The level 4s is pretty much like the bread and butter of the deck too. 4 Clockmon, 4 Arresterdramon, 4 Shoutmon King version, and 4 Damimon. I'm not playing the Tuarmon because I didn't feel like the deck really needed the Tuarmon. The Tuarmon really didn't help at all, and it was more of like a dead draw than anything else in the deck. The unique thing about your core 12 level 4s is that they all have the save ability. So when it gets deleted, you get to save. But they also have the additional ability where you can choose any card in your drop zone with save and save it under a tamer as well. So it doesn't have to be something that's in your stack. It can be anything else trash. So it really does help you like pick and choose among the cards in your drop zone, which one do you want to save under a tamer additionally. And that's more or less you looking at your board state, figuring out what inheritables you do have, what inheritables you don't have, and what inheritables you want to look for to get. And I usually say when in doubt, go the purple route, because the draw just helps you cycle and get to more of your pieces. And this deck definitely wants to keep drawing and keep getting those types of cards to their hand. So they all have so this core still has that same ability, but they also have different like on plays and when digivolving skills, and obviously inheritables. The Clockmon is a blocker naturally and can search out the top 3 for 2 different colored units with Digimon with save and adds them to your hand. So if you're breaking on tamers, you don't really want to on play him, but his real strength comes in his inheritable, where it just where you can give your Digimon save jamming. Now that's really important, especially for how this deck plays, and I fight going to 3 copies of him back to 2, and so that this is a number that's always in fluctuation. So even in this profile I have him at 2, he may go to 3, and if after I'm done with the profile or whatever it is. Like, this is a number where I feel like you as the player kind of determine through your play testing how valuable he is and how early do you want to see him and things like that. I just have him at 2, but and I'm leaning on, my draw power, searchability, and things like that so I can see my copies of Clockmon. But he's definitely a card you do want to see at least one of, so that you can cycle your, jamming between units and stuff like that if something dies, and you can put it back in and things like that. The Arresterdramon on Digivolve, if you have 2 or more sources, gains Rush. He's more or less your mid to end game type of card, but he also allows you to go like swing, go have Rush, and then if you Digivolve Arresterdramon Superior Mode on top of him, the stack will still have the Rush because it gains the Rush, and then you can still leave him up like with a Digimon blocker inheritable, swing at your opponent without suspending, and now you have like a 10k blocker on the you have a 10k blocker field that just got an end of turn attack off. It's really nice. So yeah, he's really good, and obviously the draw is really important too. And you also draw when you did, because when you did, like, let's say you swing with him and with your jamming, and you draw a card, like let's say off the Psychmon Inheritable, whatever it is. When you go Arresterdramon on top of him, your Psychmon Inheritable draw went away, but then you still have his Inheritable to draw a card too. So just something to remember as well. The Digimon is to me the worst out of all of them. I don't really like the card, but what he does is that when you play him or digivolve him, you can look at the top 3. You look at the top 3 cards, and if there's a tamer among them, a Yu, Tagiru, or Taiki, you can play it straight to the field. So he's good in that regard, but he whiffs a lot. So I've had games where I've sent double Arresterdramon Superior Mode to the bottom of the deck, and then I had a hard time getting to that card, and it kind of cost me because I didn't have my main form of removal, and I tried to have other avenues to try and win the game, but I really needed that Arresterdramon. So definitely a card you want to be wary of when using his ability. His inheritable just gives you blocker, which is again good, and you can play around with blocker. You can give even when your rookie's blocker if you digicross with the card and things like that. And then King version is super good in this deck. So what King version does is that when he on play on Digivolve, you get to play a Yu, Taiki, or Tagiru from your hand for the free. So he pretty much just gets you a free tamer, and his inheritable lets you delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 4,000 DP or less. The regular Shoutmon does have that same thing, but I feel like between him and Omni Shout, I have enough of that inheritable that I don't need to do that, and I'd rather use that space on Nikaimon and a Dracmon, just more useful cards in that scenario. So that's what these guys do. They're kind of like the bread and one of the bread and butters of this deck. Your level 5s, 1 Asta, 2 Omni Shout, and 4 copies of the Arresterdramon Superior Mode. What Astamon does is he's an interesting card. I think he's a lot better in more of like a Evil Hunter, Warp Quartz type of deck. But he digivolves for 3 on top of a green, yeah, I believe it's a green, yellow, or purple Digimon. But you can Digivolve for 5 on top of a Psychmon, so that's just something to remember as well. And then he lets you pretty much on Digivolving, he lets you call the Digimon out with save from under one of your tamers for free. So usually what you want to do is, if you do use that ability, you want to look at calling out your Clockmon, your King Shoutmon, or your Diamondmon. You want to look at calling out one of these 3 cards, because then you get their on play, because then you get their on Digivolve and on play abilities. So you get to search, play a tamer, and search and hopefully hit a tamer. So that's just one thing you want to do with him. But if you have 4 more sources, you can go into a Quartzmon that's under one of your tamers or in your hand for reduced cost of 3. And we'll get to Quartzmon in a second, but you can get into your Quartzmon pretty easy, off of his ability. And that that can be good, because Quartzmon can be a lockdown card. It can definitely be a card that can definitely end games as well. So he's just a decent card for setup, but because I don't have as many Digivolving targets for him in the deck, because the only level 4 he can Digivolve on top of is the Arresterdramon or the Psychmon, so he's just kind of limited in that regard. But his inheritable lets you draw a card too, which is cool. So keeping 1 copy of him for utility purposes is fine. The Omni Shoutmon, however, is a card that I want to utilize a little bit more. What he does is that when you Digivolve, you can delete a Digimon that's 4K or less, and then for every 2 sources you add 3 to that number, and that's just Digimon that add up to that. So you can have you can do a full board clear if all the DP powers equal to or just under the total that you have increased it to, which is nice. And he also gains an extra security tag if you have 4 more sources. And the reason why I want to utilize him a little bit more often is because Arresterdramon Superior Mode is definitely a great card, and he is the X factor of the deck, really good. But you also need him for some type of backup, because there are times where it's like, okay, well, I don't really need to go into Arresterdramon Superior Mode. He's not really going to do much of anything for me. But with the jamming inheritable, and I can gain extra security tag, I can go into Omni Shoutmon, swing, and I can really start pressuring down their security with this card early game as well. You don't really see him. Usually I wait to use my superior mode when I have an answer when I need to answer something that's on my opponent's board, or when I feel like I can set up a game-winning scenario where I can get off an attack with superior mode, hit something else, get his security down, and then end of turn, get his end of turn ability to attack the opponent. And usually he can be like a game-ending scenario card, but really you want to look for Omni Shoutmon kind of like in the mid-range. But if you do need to answer something that's big or important on your opponent's board, superior mode is the answer. And then his inheritable lets you delete a Digimon that's 4,000 DP or less. Superior mode, like I said, he's your answer. So when you Digivolve into him, for every different, so you basically choose your opponent's Digimon that's level 3, and you can put it under another Digimon or a tamer. But for every different colored tamer that's on your board, you increase that level by 1. So if you have 3 different colored tamers on board, then you can put a level 6. If you have all 4 of your different colored tamers on board, then you can tuck a level 7. So yeah, he's very, very good in that regard. A very unique form of removal, which is I think is needed, and it kind of makes your opponents play differently, because sometimes people are like, okay, I don't want to throw down a tamer against your superior mode. Well, that's fine. So then you're holding a dead card in your hand. Now, if I hit a tamer out of security, that just makes him much more useful. That means that I can really get rid of your big body. But if you don't, then that means that I'll change up my play style and play around not using this card as much, unless you put down a smaller unit that I can delete with like an on deletion ability. There, I can tuck your big guy under that and then do that. So there's a lot of different ways you can play with it. His other ability is that if you have 4 more sources, he can perform an attack at the end of your opponent's turn. And the ruling on that is you can perform an attack without suspending, right? So if you Digivolve into him past turn, you can perform an attack. If you've already attacked with him, right? Let's say you've already attacked with him. This ability still lets you perform another attack. It's just that the stipulation is you don't have to suspend, but you're still in the act of performing another attack. So this card can attack your opponent during your turn and then at the end of your turn through his ability. Really strong, really, really good card. And then obviously as an heir, lets you draw 1. There's some people like, they're early game a lot of times, especially if you have a lot of them, you can just tuck these under tamers and then use this as an inheritable, because through your level 4 boards, you can always fish them out, put them under tamers, and then like with your Psychmon, for instance, your Psychmon can just add this card from under one of your tamers back to your hand, so then you'll have access to it. So, and you know me, guys, I like having access to a lot of my cards, which is why I like purple, because purple, I feel like I generally always have access to the things I need. Then for level 7s, we're just running 2 Quartzmon. This card is kind of a game ender, kind of a lockdown card, but be wary of using the card too, as well as all these level 5s as well, because your level 5s and your Quartzmon, they don't give you cards back from the trash for like their save mechanics. So once these cards get removed from the board, all your stuff goes into the trash, and then you got to recoup, you got to rebuild your, stuff under your tamers, and try to, rebuild your board and things like that. So you always want to have a backup plan for that. And there are decks that can just answer Quartz as well, so just be aware of that. Now what Quartz is that he digivolves for 6 on top of a green, black, or white level 5 card, or level 6 card, excuse me. But the other thing that I like that he does is that if you can digivolve for 9 on top of a level 5 with save. So he can go on top of any of your level 5s, on any level 5s with save for 9. And as you know, Asamon can help reduce his Digivolution costs as well. But when you Digivolve, you suspend literally everything that's on the board. You suspend it, and then you gain a memory back for every 2. And all turns, nothing hits them. So blast. So if your opponent wants to play Balezamon, they go into Blast Mode to try to unsuspend. He prevents that. Any Ult Force, he prevents it. So you literally anything that can unsuspend, he prevents it. Now that doesn't affect new units coming in, because a new unit coming in can tap, but once it taps, it can't become untapped. So he really just locks down anything that gets suspended on both turns. He's like the only one that can unsuspend. And then when he attacks, for every 5 cards between you and your opponent's board, which is Tamers, Digimon, whatever it is, he gets to burn. He can burn a security. So I did have a situation in locals where I was able to go into my Quartzmon. He survived my opponent's turn, because Arresterdramon can still tuck him under if you have the right amount of Tamers. But I was able to swing, tap down a card on board. I had 5, burn the security, and he was able to hit free game. So this card is a very strong card, really good, but it is a card that your opponent does need to respond to immediately, because the longer that he's on the board, the greater in value that you gain from him. And then for the Tamers to finish off the deck, 2 copies of Watchmaker, 3 copies of Uemano, 3 copies of Tagiru, and 4 copies of Taiki. They're pretty simple. Your core hunter tamers all have an ability, your core hunter tamers all have an ability where you can tap them, put a card from under any of your tamers under Digimon to reduce the Digivolution cost. But they all have unique abilities. So Watchmaker is not a hunter, but he's like one of your best searches in the deck, and he's another number where I fight against running 2 copies or 3 copies, because as a searcher he's really good, but he's also a card that you can whiff on for a certain amount of your abilities. You can't play him out with Shoutmon. Damimon can't play him out from his ability. So there is a stipulation, but he's still very good. He searches out a hunter and a Digimon with save. So he can hit 2 targets. He can hit one of your tamers, one of your hunter tamers, and one of your Digimon with save. If you have just 4 tamers out on the board, 4 or more tamers out, you can tap him to give a Digimon with save security attack +1. This is very good in conjunction with like your Clockmon, especially if you have Clockmon under your Omni Shoutmon. That's 3 with 4 sources, that's 3 checks at your opponent with jamming. Really, really nice for what he provides. Uemano, now these 2 have an ability to start your turn. He's just a memory setter. Uemano, he was errata because his ability on the text was printed wrong. Good job. But at the start of your main phase, when you put a card under him, you can gain a memory. Tagiru, start of your main phase, put a card under him to draw a card. The draw is the most important part of this deck, because you want to help and keep cycling your pieces. The memory gain is really good if you look at your hand, look at your board, and you plan out your turn where you may need that extra memory, because that extra memory can turn into because I've had it where I missed out on lethal because I didn't put a card under him. Yes, you're losing a card, but gaining the memory, seeing what I have in hand, I could have had an extra attack for Arresterdramon that could have ended the game that turn, but it bought my opponent another turn because, you know, I didn't gain that extra memory, so that means I missed out on lethal and things like that. So that's just something you want to be aware of, that the extra memory is not the best, but if you have it, if you feel like you can go for a lethal in that turn with what you have in your hand and field, and gaining that extra memory will go a lot towards doing that. And then Taiki getting the draw is just really good. But that is the deck profile, guys, for Hunters. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really like this deck. I really like playing with it. There are a lot of... every build kind of has its own little needs. Like, the builds kind of will look the same because, you know, you pretty much everything from the set. But there are a few ratio differences that you can see in other people's decks and mine. So there is that. So if you guys like the deck profile, definitely like, comment, subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one. I'll keep making improvements to the deck, and I'll be playing it on stream soon enough. All right, see you later.